Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me today I have Dan.
Hey man, how are
Not too bad. We've had the international break, which I guess has softened the blow a little bit after a pretty disappointing defeat against Everton last time out. I guess going into the game, we weren't too optimistic about our chances against them, but especially the manner of the defeat, 4-0, must really sting a bit. So, what were your thoughts on the match?
I don't think that 4-0 was really a fair indication of how the game played out. I think Huddleston's red card really it ended up inflating the situation, blowing out in Everton's favour a little bit. Um, we didn't start off great, and Everton were able to penetrate our defence pretty early on a few times. But after we conceded, I thought we settled reasonably well, and we started to build and work on our structure a bit. The second half, particularly, I thought we were actually really starting to get on top and really pressuring Everton. We looked like it was only a matter of time until we were going to equalise, and then Huddleston's red card just really changed the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was interesting. Coman changed Everton's formation to a 3-5-2 in response to us, so it really seemed that we were getting to them and they were sort of having to adjust their game to suit us, which was, I guess, a positive of the way we were playing. And as you say, we did seem to be creating a lot more chances, and obviously that red card really disrupted the flow of the game. Did you think it was a red card? And then, I guess, second to that, do you think we were right to appeal, and was it a fair outcome?
I don't think it was a red card. I thought it was a harsh red card, and I thought that the referee, I honestly think he got that one wrong. I'm not sure whether, it's one of those ones where maybe from his specific angle it looked a lot worse than from the camera angles that we got or something. But yeah, I didn't think it was a red. I didn't think he didn't come in with any great speed in a slide. It wasn't particularly malicious or dangerous, so to speak. Like, it was just sort of one that sort of just went a little bit wrong. But on the appeal, I think given that it got as a red card for dangerous violent conduct, and that carries a minimum 3-week suspension. Huddleston's that valuable to our squad and our team that I don't think we had any option but to appeal. So I think appealing was the right choice. And I was a little bit surprised that
Yeah,
that just nothing happened about it. That they basically
especially so
said,
quickly. They came.
yeah,
I think it came back in about 3 or 4 hours.
and I don't want to. I'm not trying to make this out that like we have this problem with the FA, because I don't think at this time of the season we don't want to be having a discussion about how the FA is against us or anything. But I do think that the Alam's poor relationship with them does contribute to some of these decisions when we go to appeal things. But I think if they were to, like, they did reject it, but they didn't add on extra time, which I guess is about as fair as you could get when getting your appeal rejected.
Yeah, and I think they basically will view it as if it's a frivolous appeal, if it's like a leg break or something like that, and you appeal it,
Yeah.
obviously it's going to be considered frivolous. But our one, it was very much borderline. The only thing I'd say is maybe they should have considered downgrading the charge to a 1-game ban, because if they want to say that yes, it was a red card and yes, it was there, then that's fair enough. But I think they then have to consider whether the length of ban is appropriate. And obviously, in some cases, they may well say 3 games isn't enough. It deserves 5 games. It deserves 7 games. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But especially in this case with Huddleston, I would have thought a 1-game ban would have been sufficient, because, as you say, I really didn't think it was that bad a tackle. And on a weekend where we saw McLean go in on Sanchez, Dyer go in on, I forget who it was, in the Tottenham game, and I think there was one other particularly bad tackle on the weekend, all of which went in with their studs up and made contact with a player's ankle. And they all, I think, got either a yellow card or just a telling off. It's a pretty bitter pill to swallow when we've got a star man suspended for the game, for the 3 games coming up.
Not only that, I was just thinking that, like, you look at even the game against Burnley, that tackle by George Boyd, which got no punishment whatsoever. Like,
Ironically,
And then-
Huddleston getting a yellow in that incident
Yeah.
as well. So
And-
he's copped it a fair bit recently. And I think if you'll remember last time we were in the Premier League, there was that incident with Jamie Vardy where Vardy, I wouldn't call it a dive, but it was similar to the incident that saw Vardy sent off against West Ham last season, where he sort of leans into the player and initiates the contact and then lunges forward. So, and Huddleston got sent off for that one as well. So he's had a bit of bad luck with red cards towards the end of seasons, especially in the Premier League.
Mm.
But then on the game in general, obviously it's a bit concerning that our away form has continued to struggle. We really need to start picking up a few points on the road if we are to stay up. Do you think that on the back of pretty strong home form at the moment, we're undefeated at home since Boxing Day? Do you think we can stay up on the back of our home form only, or do we really need to start picking up points away from home?
I think we do need to be trying to pick up some extra points. But if we can maintain our home form, then that's gonna give us the best chance at success and maintaining our Premier League status. I've looked at the last lot of fixtures we've got, and personally, I see 7 of our last 9 games as completely winnable games.
How many wins do you think we need? 4, 5?
I'd say 5. I think 5 gets us to 5 would get us to 36. So probably between around the 5 or 6 wins, maybe 5 wins and a couple of draws should be enough to get us up. But I think when you look at the last fixtures, there's Man City is one where you go, well, we're probably not going to get that the points there.
Spurs another one.
Yeah, Spurs on the last day. But every other game in there is, games that we are either teams around us that we can that we need to beat and can beat, or it's teams that we've performed well against or even beat, like I think Southampton we've got again in the run-in. So it's going to be tight, but I think if we continue the form we've been showing for the most part under Silva, then I think we've got a good chance of staying up.
And then just on the game itself, who did you think were the best performers on the day? I mean, we spoke in the lead up about potentially flirting with having Markovic up top with Hernandez, and that's how Silva went into the game. How do you think that paid off, and who do you think stood out in the game?
We didn't score any goals, so I guess it didn't really pan out how we wanted, but it wasn't a terrible move. There was some bright patches from both Markovic and from Hernandez, who always benefits from having players around him. I actually thought our wingbacks, both the wide defenders, played really well. I thought, apart from Alabdalawi's horror back pass to give them the late goal, I thought he was really good, and a couple of really good deliveries into the box, and was pretty good at shackling his player. But and Robertson on the same side, on the other side, was unlucky to hit the side netting with his effort on goal, and he did well, closing down their wide players. So I thought those two were actually really good for us.
Yeah, and I think despite the fact we lost 4-0, and it doesn't happen too often in a 4-0, I thought Jakupovic had a decent game. I don't think you can really fault him for any of the 4 goals. And really, he kind of kept us in it, especially in the first half when Everton had a couple of chances. So I thought he had a decent game. And it's going to be interesting now with Dawson also back fit, whether Davies holds his spot in the team, whether Dawson forces his way in ahead of, say, a Maguire or Ranocchia, or how indeed we do line up. We spoke about it on the podcast a few weeks ago, the dilemma of having four fit centre-backs. So it's going to be interesting to see which way Silva goes with that one.
I was just going to say, it's a dilemma, but it's always the dilemma you want, having
absolutely.
Having numbers there again. Considering how we started the year and struggled and had Livermore in at centre-half and everything, it's good to have everyone close to full fitness again.
And it's great to see Henriksen back fully fit. I saw an interview with him recently where he said he's been out training for 2 weeks straight now, no issues with his shoulder at all. So he's been able to maintain his fitness while injured as well, which is great to hear. So he'll be a really valuable option to have as well because any sort of options in midfield, especially attacking options, should be quite useful as especially with Huddlestons suspended at the moment.
Absolutely.
But we'll move on and talk about our player of the week, which is one of the fullbacks that has been at the club for quite a while, a wing back you might say, for Elmohamady. He's been at the club since 2012, signed I think just about on deadline day of that window, reuniting with Steve Bruce from his time at Sunderland. And he scored pretty soon into his spell with us with a goal in the 3-2 win over Leeds, which was a pretty thrilling game. And I guess the most well-known stat about Elmohamady is his longevity in the side, where he actually went all the way until last season against Cardiff, having only missed one game that he was eligible to play in, and actually starting 100 consecutive games. And all up, well, actually probably more than 100 consecutive games actually. Can't remember what the actual stat would be. But he played 100 Premier League games for us all up, which was, actually as of the Everton game, I think that was his 100th Premier League game for us. So a really impressive record in terms of appearances for us, and probably one of, if not our highest appearance holders currently in the squad. Actually, I'm sure he would be the highest, with 207 games for us. And he's also managed 11 goals. So he's been a quite creative player for us. And obviously there was that stat in, I think it was the 13-14 season, where he was the player with the most crosses in the entire league. So he at his peak was really good at getting down those wings and really whipping balls into the box and giving ourselves a few decent chances to score a few goals. But he's fallen off a bit this season in particular, and obviously struggled a bit last season as well, as he was in and out of the side. We had Moses Odebajo starting at right back ahead of him, and that might have put him out of joint a little bit. But what's your overall opinion of Elmohamady and how you've seen him at the club?
Elmohamady, he's a great character in the squad, and I think when he's on his game and he's playing well and he gets his deliveries right, he's a very dangerous player to have in your squad. But as you say, I think he has fallen away a little bit. He set his standards for himself very high early on in his days for City, and he's been a little bit disappointing for me this year. But I think he's a player that you would still like to have in the team or in the squad. He still has something to offer, I think.
And what's your favourite memory of him? I mean, you touch on there that he's a colourful character, and he's had a few instances where he's been in the spotlight, I guess, when we were promoted in 2012-13, getting in front of the cameras and having a bit of a dance, and he's always been pretty keen on having a bit of spotlight on him. But what's your favourite memory of him?
Elmohamady's one where I don't like. Most of my memories, unfortunately, of Elmohamady are from his occasionally really terrible mistakes.
Yeah.
And so like when I was thinking about this earlier, and I was sort of thinking, his handball on the line earlier in the season, or the back pass to McGregor previously, or
I remember
things like that.
He had that really poor week where we played Spurs twice, once in the league and once in the League Cup. And I do actually have positive memories of him, so I don't want this to sound like we're roasting him. But he had that week against Spurs where it was absolutely horrendous, where we were 0-0 late into the game, and he gave away a penalty with a handball, which I really don't think was a handball in retrospect. But not only that, we then played them in the League Cup and had it 2-2 going to penalties, and he was the one that missed the penalty after, I think, both sides, I think it was 10 all in penalties or 9 all in penalties or something crazy like that. So he had a really poor week against them, and that really stands out. But, I mean, on the positive front, towards the end of that promotion season when we had Ghetto in the team as well, and they were linking up so well, and it seemed that they were scoring goals or assisting each other quite regularly, and I remember them scoring some pretty vital goals to get us promoted. That would probably be, top of the list. But there was also that early season game against Newcastle where we won 3-2, and I think he scored the first or second goal in that game, and really kind of got us back into it after I think Remy scored the first goal. I think he actually scored a header, which you don't really think of Elmohamady as scoring too many goals with his head. But he is actually quite good in the air. I mean, I seem to remember him winning quite a few aerial duels as well. So he has a few unexpected skills, I guess.
Yeah, I do remember like he does manage to get into the box and get in the right position if he's on the pitch in the right like I was looking through and his goal against Chelsea in the 3-2 loss
Yep.
last time we're in the league was a good goal, and the sort of got into the right position, and I think that's probably one of his attributes when he's on form. If he's either delivering really good crosses or he's getting at that back post, expecting the balls from the other side. So.
And that's it. I mean, when he's motivated and when he's on form, he's great. And we saw that as recently as 2 weeks ago against Swansea, when it was his ball into the box that Niasse got his second goal from. So he's still capable of producing that. It seems to be almost just a mental thing with him when he's actually motivated, when he's actually on form. But we'll move on then and we'll discuss the West Ham game coming up. And I think if the Swansea game was do or die a couple of weeks ago, the West Ham game is certainly that as well. And it's a really vital week, in fact, because we've also got Middlesbrough, which we'll discuss as well. And I think that's on either the Wednesday or the Thursday morning. I'm not sure which. But it's basically a case that surely we basically need to win both games, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. With the league how it is, and we're a point above Middlesbrough or something. We really need to get the points against them, and West Ham as well. These are both winnable games. Like the last when we played West Ham earlier in the season, like we were desperately unlucky not to score. I think what they gave their bloody goalpost the man of the match on that occasion. So.
And I actually saw an interview with Dimitri Payet that he quoted that particular game is one of the reasons that he left West Ham, because of the fact that they were so defensive against us and the fact that the goalpost got man of the match. So it's a bit funny to see that as one of the main games that comes to mind for Payet when he thinks of the reasons he left West Ham.
It is. It's a weird one, but I think like even if we perform to a similar level as we did last time at West Ham, I think if you can get Niasse and then Hernandez to link up again, I can't see any reason we won't score goals.
Do we start both of them, or do we I mean, I can see the argument for starting both of them, but then I also appreciate Silva's point of view, which is that Niasse is quite good off the bench to sort of disrupt the rhythm of the game and change things up, at a time when he thinks that the game is ripe for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we've been talking the last few weeks about wanting to start more offensively and with extra players up top and everything, but it's a tough one. But I don't know if we should. I think, given the history of what we've seen when we brought Niasse off the bench or brought Hernandez off the bench to just add the extra element once the defences are starting to tire, I think Silva might be is on the right track with that in terms of his strategy.
And then, of course, there's a Robert Snodgrass-sized elephant in the room with the winger returning to play us for the first time since departing. And he hasn't scored a goal for West Ham yet. And there seems to be that funny habit of ex-players scoring goals against us. So how do you see his return to the club? And do you think he'll be received favourably? Do you reckon he'll be booed? Do you reckon it should just be a case of, well, he's an opposition player, but that's it. We don't need to sort of boo him or cheer him.
I think it'll be a little bit mixed. I think there'll be some of the fans there, and I can understand this, even though I don't agree with it, who will just appreciate what he did do for the club while he was here, and I guess appreciate his honesty in basically saying, I don't want to play at this club anymore, move me on. But I'm on the other side where I am not a fan of a player saying that, and I don't have a problem with him having gone, because I would rather have players who bleed black and amber and who are desperate and give their all for the club no matter what's going on. I sort of look at it like, if it comes to the end of the season and you want to leave, I think that's fine. I don't really have a problem within the off season going, okay, I think my time here is at an end, but I'm not a fan of mid-season demands, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think, he will have an impact on the game one way or the other, whether it's even if it's just his getting reactions out of the crowd or what. But he's a dangerous player, and we do need to take him, give him the credit that he deserves.
Well, certainly with Antonio, Obiang, and also Winston Reid out, I think all three of them are injured for West Ham, all for several weeks. I think Lanzini and Snodgrass, and I guess also Andre Ayew are the three most dangerous players for West Ham. I guess it's a good time to get them. They've just lost 2 games to Leicester and I think Bournemouth. So they are certainly not in any good form, and with their most dangerous players out, it might be a decent time to be playing them. But Middlesbrough have just sacked their manager, and an assistant manager that we would know all too well, and Steve Agnew has taken over as interim. Though I haven't really seen them making any moves to sign a permanent manager, so I'm not sure if he's just going to see out the rest of the season, a bit like Leicester are doing with another former Hull City assistant manager. I mean, they played their first game under Agnew against United, and it's hard to read into that whether it's more of the same from them or whether United were just too good. But do you have much concern that Borough could sort of kickstart their season against us, I guess?
I watched that game against United, and I didn't think Middlesbrough were that poor. They were creating a fair amount of opportunities. They just were lacking cutting edge, and like Negredo got the ball stuck under his feet a few times, and just things that weren't really going for them. They're a dangerous proposition next week. In all honesty, as you said, if Agnew can recreate what Shakespeare's doing at Leicester, then we might be in for a bit of trouble. But I think Agnew seems to want Middlesbrough to push forward more and play more offensively, and I guess I'm hoping that it's just too soon in them making that transition in game plan, in game play and style, that we might still catch them not fully understanding the system that he's wanting to play with them, and we might catch them out a bit. But I still think give us a really good chance of getting 2 wins this week. When we played Swansea, we knew it was a must win, and everyone really stepped up and played the game the way that we should have played. And I'm relatively optimistic that we will repeat that this week.
And of course, it's a pretty incredible stat with Marco Silva, 38 games at home undefeated. So hopefully that can keep going at least a bit further into the season, because I suspect if we can get the 6, I mean, at the moment I feel like our season's right on the precipice, and if we were to lose, for instance, if we lost both games, absolutely we'd be relegated in all but, except for mathematical confirmation, would be basically down. But if we were to win both games and results go our way, who knows, we could actually end up outside the relegation zone above, say, a Swansea, or I think maybe even a Leicester, I think might be within reach of us. So it could all suddenly look a bit rosier, and it would be quite interesting to see if we were to win both games, how the mood would change and how we'd approach the final games of the season, because especially having Sunderland and Crystal Palace back-to-back, where they're basically both games where the loser of those games would almost certainly be relegated. It's going to be a really interesting run-in at the end of the season. But what would your tips for the 2 games be?
I think West Ham, I think, will go 2-1. And I think only just a 1-0 against Middlesbrough. But both wins.
Yeah, I think Borough's definitely going to be a 1-0 either way. I can't see either side having the confidence to really open up too much and go for it beyond that. I think the Middlesbrough game will see very similar to the Swansea game, where I think Nias will come on late, and it'll sort of be hoping to break the game open. So I could see Nias scoring in a 1-0 in that one. The West Ham game's the one I'm really nervous about, because I can see that going either way, and I'm really hopeful that we can get up in that one, and hopefully we can see someone like Hernandez on the score sheet in that one, and maybe a 2-1 victory in that one. Or I guess my pessimism would be that we'll end up losing that one, but that's the one that I'd be less confident about. But hopefully we can get the 6 points out of those. We'll just finish off then with a couple of questions from the Facebook group. We put that out to our members in the build-up last week, asking for any questions that they wanted answered on the podcast, and we got a few really great entries. So we'd start with the first question, which was regarding Silva's tactics, I guess, and it regards the fact that Steve Bruce was quite a defensive manager at the club. He saw defence as the most important priority. Can Silva actually be as good a manager or have as good a record as Bruce at the club, despite his emphasis more on attack rather than defence?
Absolutely. I think if we can maintain and keep Silva, I think we really need to trying to tie him down for at least next year, regardless of what division we're in. If we can keep him, I can honestly see him, the way he thinks about the game and the way he approaches the games, as becoming one of our most successful managers.
Which, I mean, Steve Bruce basically is. He is, I would say, our most successful ever manager. I mean, when you look at the accomplishments he has, 2 promotions to the Premier League, FA Cup final, our only European campaign, and I think his win rate's up there with some of our best managers as well. So he's certainly one to emulate. But I completely agree. I think for instance, if Silva was at the club as long as Steve Bruce, I have no doubt that Silva would be the more successful manager, just because being at the club for that long would mean that he has the time to build the squad the way he wants it, build the club the way he wants it, and I have no doubt we would be probably a mid-table Premier League club, if not higher, if he was here for the 3 or 4 years that Steve Bruce was. And I find the question a little bit interesting, because I'm not sure I entirely agree that Silva isn't focused on defence as well, because we've seen in games against Swansea, for instance, where he goes out there and tries to lock the game down and tries to get the game on our terms before he sort of flicks a switch and brings on he brings on more attacking options to change the game in our favour and really change the dynamics of the game. So we have to remember, for instance, we had the draw against United 0-0 and we beat Liverpool 2-0. So we got back-to-back clean sheets under Silva, sort of unexpectedly against these bigger clubs. So he is able to sort of focus on the defence and get the goals that we're conceding down, which you'd see in the averages that we've conceded under him compared to Phelan. But no, I have no doubt if he's here next season, and the way he's talking, it sounds like he'd be interested in being here next season. I think we'd be very well improved under Silva. The second question's a bit more fun. It's a bit more of a fantasy question, and this one can sort of have our mouths watering and sort of reaching for the stars. But if we were able to have any player from a rival club to play with us for the rest of his career, regardless of how old he is now, so, for instance, if it's Lukaku or someone, which may well be your pick, but if we could have any player for the rest of their career, who would you take in the Premier League?
When I thought about this question, this was actually, as you said, like a really fun question to think about. It really did get my mouth watering and thinking about all the possibilities that you could have. But I would think if you could basically tie down a player for the rest of their career at our club, you'd be looking for a player you would build a team around.
Yeah.
And so I started going, all right, well, let's look at quality forwards, and you go, well, maybe you would even if you only get 2 years out of him, is having someone like Ibrahimovic at the club for the remainder of his career worthy option, or Llorente, who's really starting to find his feet in the Premier League, or Eden Hazard as a world class player, or Lukaku, as you mentioned. But and then I was thought, maybe you don't want someone who's a finished product now. You do want someone you can build around, but you want just that little bit younger, just 3-4 years younger, but who has a huge amount of potential. And do you start looking at someone like Marcus Rashford or Divock Origi to build a forward line around? But I moved away from the forwards. I thought. And I went, and I slowly moved backward down the field, and I looked for do you go to a midfield anchor, so someone to replicate or replace the Huddlestons sort of position, and I thought, look, Everton had those 2 young boys, Calvert-Lewin and Tom Davies, who were outstanding on the night against us, and players who have huge potential and huge futures ahead of them if they stay injury free. Then they're sort of options as well. But I really thought that I would want, if I could have anyone for the rest of the career, I would probably go with a nice, vocal, loud centre half who can direct a team around and is a nice quality player. And I started thinking about the best young centre halves, and I thought, you could grab Kurt Zuma, someone like that, and you go, he's a quality player, and he would add a lot. But honestly, at the end of the day, I wouldn't choose a rival player. And I'm sure you've sort of figured out where this was going. But honestly, if I could pick any player, I would tie down Harry Maguire for a lifetime contract because, while he may not be good enough for Gareth Southgate, he is certainly good enough for me.
Absolutely, that's a great answer. I like that one. I sort of picked up where you were going when you started talking young centre-backs, and I guess I'm slightly less loyal in that sense with my answer because I was thinking similar lines as you with going for a young player who's not yet finished but who has huge potential and huge amounts of growth to come in the Premier League. And whilst the player that I've sort of centred in on might not have shown the qualities to be a leader, so perhaps not a player you would build a team around. His stats compared to all of his peers and all of the superstars of the game at his age, he's just head and shoulders above them. So I actually went with Dele Alli in midfield because I think he is an absolute superstar, and I think he's already showing at such a young age that he has the potential to be a giant of the game for many years to come. And I think he's a player who you can put in your midfield and he can be that, attacking midfielder, and he's got the goals to prove it. I think he's on 14 for the season, which is up there with some of the big strikers. But he also has the grit to be able to go back and play a more defensive role if needed. And I think he can cover large amounts of ground around the park, and at his age, if you could tie him down for a lifetime contract, I think he would be a player that you could certainly just build a team around. You can basically have him in there as your goal scoring midfielder, and then you can build players around him. So yeah, it was a great question to think about and a great question to sort of consider which players and what qualities you'd look for in a player that you'd have at the club for the life of their career. And I suspect if we had a team with Harry Maguire and Dele Alli in it, I think you're off to a pretty good start for a pretty decent side. Though I reckon there'd be a couple of red cards in that side because I think both of them like a good tackle. So it'd certainly be an interesting one. But thanks for coming on, Dan. Thanks for having this chat. We've covered a fair few topics on this one.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I'm always keen to talk some football and talk some Tigers.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for your questions. We had some great entries. So for next time as well, keep submitting those questions and we'll chat about them and hopefully give you guys a decent answer to them. But thanks for listening in, everyone. And we've got 2 games this week, so hopefully we can come away with the 6 points that we need to really push on and start our survival push properly. And until next time, come on, City! You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
There's no turning back 'cause you're out.